Lynn is the CEO of Creatrix Johannesburg, and she's very involved in branded content, being on the Branded Content Marketing Association committee with me. And I thought it was a fantastic opportunity to chat to the rest of the world for Branded Content Day that is being brought to you by Nimmer and Film and the BCMA about the branded content in radio. So, hello, Lynn, and why don't you tell us a little bit about how you apply branded content in South Africa?
Thanks, Spero, and welcome to the world, everybody. My company, Creatrix, has specialized in mother tongue storytelling campaigns for many years now. And because of the new world that we have, the digital world, it's often been construed as a kind of Cinderella medium. For those of you out there who don't know the African kind of headspace, stories are absolutely up there with the greatest form of entertainment. And the heard word, because there are issues with literacy, different languages, it's very much radio is alive and well and broadcasting in all 11 South African languages, which is how we have come to use our storytelling chops, if you like, to be able to communicate on the terms, on the turf, and in the language of the target market. We have 11 official languages in South Africa. So our superpower, if you like, is the storytelling, which is how you can actually create creative work for people in their language on the medium. Anglo-American, who's an international company, very much based in South Africa, wanted to build trust in communities. Now, that's a very abstract thing to speak about. So we actually used the value as kind of the main dominant key theme and wrote a 9-part story or story series or sitcom or however you want to call it, with characters with whom the target market can identify, who get into all sorts of scrapes. It's a very brave client, so we've dealt with things, gender-based violence, we've had people murdered, we've had heteropaternal superfecundation, which is when a woman can be impregnated by 2 men on the same day, for those of you who want to look that up. And so we use the story to drive the value. So the values are embedded within the story. We have emotional and we have functional benefits as you know, sort of the bog standard of any communication. Storytelling is effective because it engages the hormones that actually give us a sense of well-being. The what if and then, the cliffhanger that you must tune in next week to find out what happened, the chemicals in the brain that actually lure everybody into storytelling. The reason that storytelling works is that it operates on an emotional level. It's actually a gut feeling. And while you're listening to the story and absorbing the characters and identifying with the plot and the character, there's a sense of what we call Ubuntu, which is a South African word, a universal term, but used in South Africa too, to speak of I am I because of others. It's very much in the South African psyche, and so we draw on that when we do our storytelling, because I am I because of others. So with the campaigns, most of our campaigns are storytelling campaigns. Most of them are episodic. Most of them we find different. You know, people have often asked me, aren't I bored of doing this? Absolutely not. Storytelling is absolutely the most fascinating thing one can do. But if you want to build trust, if you want to build loyalty, brand love, it's a perfect platform. I have been in love with radio since I discovered radio spots way back in my youth. And in fact, every spot I ever wrote was a little story. There's always a value, there's always a call to action, there's always stakes that sometimes the product is the kind of outcome of those stakes. But when you're talking about brand values, you're not saying buy my stuff, buy my stuff. You're actually engaging people in the realm of excitement, tension, love, if you like, because radio is a very beloved medium in South Africa. Some of our radio stations are actually called Mhlobo weneni, which means my best friend. And it's a cheap medium for the consumer. Nelson Mandela always said, you speak to someone in a language they understand, it goes to their head. You speak to someone in their home mother tongue, it goes to their heart. And we found great success in the campaigns that we've done because, and you could say it's a creative idea, but it's so basic. And we still are fighting, well, not fighting, but arguing 20 years later about communication in mother tongue. And so we created for the market, in the market's language. A lot of characters are taken from our real life. And so that's what we do. We do creative radio storytelling in mother tongue languages.
A lot of clients today are wanting to get into the social media space and get on and jump on technology. But the reality is there's still a lot of people listening to radio and very good creative radio. So just tell us a little bit about how you're overcoming brands just wanting to be on social media.
Social media is just one tool in a huge toolbox. It's absolutely vital and absolutely necessary. But a social campaign by itself and of itself wouldn't really pull the traction that we would find if you added radio. So we put radio in the center of the communications package, and then we amplify it, if you want to call it that, into the social media space. Sometimes in mother tongue, which is quite a challenge on social media, very often in English, but obviously you have to have the engagement and the feedback. We often look at things like prizes. We've done campaigns that are very digitally orientated, but we like a good story.
Thank you very much for that very good explanation. Just explain to me a little bit more about how you use creativity on the radio platform to get value for your clients. Just explore that a little bit for me.
Every good campaign starts with a good strategy. You cannot get creativity out of no strategy. And very often we help clients with the strategy in order to get to the creative truth of the matter. And there's always a sense of the truth in the creativity that makes it creative. I'll give you an example. Old Mutual is a funeral insurance company who wanted to, flog in life insurance big here and funeral insurance. So we took, for example, the 5 phases of death that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about: depression, anger, bargaining, denial. Each phase of the grieving process. And then we added that what would happen if the narrator was already dead. And so we actually had the narrator speaking from beyond the grave, which was then used. Very often in our stories, we don't use the functional benefits to punt people, to knock them over the head. So we create the emotive link. And then in our country, the station presenters or DJs are very engaged. So what we do with the story is the heart of the mini program. And then around it, we have what usually are called live reads, but basically the presenter weaves the practical benefits and messages around the story that we're telling.
It's incredible because branded content actually started on radio. If you go back into the early years of radio when
I'll tell you about
started.
Okay, I'll tell you about that. So the reason that telenovelas are called soapies is because they used to be sponsored by the soap companies, Lux Radio Theatre, the American shows. And it's weird in a way because I'm sure America has moved on from radio storytelling, but that's where it began and that's what happens in South Africa. So, for example, we had the Soapy of Soaps, and we could just use the Soapy of Soaps because it was perfect soap opera with a soapy client. So we are, and it's not that we're so backward, and people in and around the world are like, what are you doing? You're doing storytelling on radio. There's a different ethos here. There's a different sense of time, and people have got time, and people tune in. The wonderful thing about the work that we do is that the advertising is perceived as programming. So people are tuning in to our adverts, which is just a perfect combination. So people think that, we don't really mind who thinks they produced it, and our production values are very high. But you can tune in to our ad, which is usually weekly, and destination listening as well. So it's always been branded content. I mean, we've spoken about there's branded content, there's behavior change, technology. There are so many different names for this, but it keeps coming up. If you give people content to entertain them and inform them, they will absorb your message better than if you're knocking them over the head in the 30-second spot.
Yes, and if you obviously with the medium, you're giving them value. So you're either educating them or you telling them if there's a better deal or an easier way to do it. And I think that's the key about running a really creative message into the medium, because then the viewer or the listener wants to listen to it because they're getting some value out of it. If they're not getting any value out of it, then it's no use. The brand's not doing a great job.
Man is the storytelling animal, Salman Rushdie says. You're used to it from whether or not we're literate or not. Our grandmothers still in this country sit and tell the children the stories of their lives. Eskom came to us to ask us to create a children's story series to teach little children about electricity savings. It's a very dull subject. So what was the creativity in that? We created Ruby, who was a little girl, and then we had all of the different electrical appliances as anthropomorphic characters. So she could engage with them. So it was a story that we wrote. It was a story that was then told. We've got little songs that go with it. And so that lived on radio. It lived online as a website. And because this was done a few years ago, I mean, the pace of things have changed so much in the last 5 years that they could carry on, because a children's story like this lasts for absolutely ever. We've also worked on Unilever. Similarly, they wanted, their values were going to be the rights of the child, not the soap that they were selling. So we had little characters, again, little kids under the age of 5 do believe in anthropomorphism. And we went to Ghana and we went to Kenya to see how the language works and how the storytelling works. And we had a series of 6 stories that dealt with resilience, hardworkingness, courage. So not every client wants to bang people over the head with their product. It's the brand love that comes with helping mother to child literacy and language and story transmission.
Thank you very much for your time, Lynn. It's obviously this discussion makes up a bigger part of a whole range of content that we're doing for the Branded Content Day brought to you by Nemarin and the BCMA. So feel free to join the BCMA, the bcma.info. And yes, we're obviously trying to bring and disseminate the message of branded content. So Lynn, thank you very much again for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Viva branded content, viva forever.
Viva.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you very much. Chat soon. Bye.